I am reflecting today on the scapegoat. It is Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, and I'm so grateful to the Lord for what He's done for me and becoming that scapegoat, the perfect scapegoat. So I had some really interesting things happen this last year in dealing with the scapegoat ritual. And I see Yeshua as the perfect scapegoat. There's no need for another. But there are people that don't want to go through Yeshua knowing who he is. And they want to have what the scapegoat offers without submitting to God. And the devil, he wants to mimic God. He wants to be like God. He wants his children to act like God's children and do all of these things. And the law, the Torah, is the same for those that love God and those that do not. It doesn't matter. It's like gravity, right? And it's a law. And whether or not you agree with it or not, it's still, you jump off your porch, whether you believe in gravity or not, you're going to fall. It's the same principle. And the devil knows the law. And he knows the scapegoat ritual. And it can be performed on other people. So let me explain what is happening. And I'm explaining this so that you can pray about it when you meet a scapegoat, somebody who has been turned into a scapegoat. And there are some criteria, right? That they need to be innocent. Like the goat was selected by Lot, but there was no fault in it, right? He was innocent. And Yeshua was the perfect scapegoat because he was and is the only innocent, righteous one of us. So it had to have been him. He was the only one that would have sufficed. But there are people who want to get rid of their iniquity. They want to get rid of their sin. And I'm not talking about, it's still not going to change who they are, but the consequences of the spiritual consequences. They want to be rid of that. There's a spiritual mark that is left when a sin is committed on both the person it's committed on and the person who's committing it. A rape victim still holds this inequity in them, even though they did nothing wrong. And forgiveness and atonement can free them of that. And the same is true for those committing the crimes. If they repent, and then they can be free of this through Christ Yeshua. And this is why it's so important to come to him with all things. Even if you didn't do anything wrong, for healing and for cleansing of your heart and your soul of this inequity that's been done to you. But there's people who don't want to go to Yeshua. And so, let me explain what I believe the Lord has revealed to me of how this happens. And the adversary knows this, and his people know how to do this. And so I don't feel bad sharing this, because it's not something that I'm sharing it with you so that you can pray and be healed. You have somebody who is innocent, and somebody. So the priest would lay both hands on this innocent scapegoat. And all of the inequity, all of the sin, it's all put onto the scapegoat. Well, why both hands? So let me explain. When you make a connection with someone with both hands, and you're pushing all of the inequity onto the person, it creates a vacuum in yourself or in your people. Because you're emptying it. Now, if you know anything about vacuums, what do you think happens? When you create a space, then all of the innocence and purity that was in the scapegoat is now in the people, right? And all of the guilt, all of the inequity is put onto the scapegoat. And the scapegoat is sent out to the wilderness, to Azazel. And some believe that just means wilderness. Others believe that it's a demon. I'm not going to go into that. But this is happening. And I know this is happening because I've witnessed some of these things happen. And you can pray about it. But there's something that you need to understand. I tried praying. There was somebody that I was working with, and they had been made into a scapegoat, and I didn't know what to do, right? I had no idea, and God had to show me several other things. It took several weeks for me to understand, maybe a couple months, what was happening really. And what it boiled down to was, how do we take this inequity that was forced on this innocent person? And oftentimes it's done when they're a child, and then they grow into an adult. They're still getting blamed for everything. Have you ever met somebody who they don't even have to be there, and it's their fault, and no one likes them? They're always the problem, but they're really not. They've done nothing wrong. See, they have to be innocent in order to be the scapegoat. Right? Because if you're putting the guilt on them and taking their innocence, if they were not innocent, then you can't take their innocence, right? You can't. This is a spiritual thing that's happening. It's a law, and it can be misused. But God made it perfect. When He became the scapegoat, He used the law to set us free, whereas others are using the law to control and condemn. It's terrible. And only God knows a man's heart. And I'm not judging because I don't know who is what, and they're in the same place as righteousness is wickedness. How can we possibly know? It's so convoluted and ridiculous. So it's just better not to judge, because we can't. Only He can. So I was concerned. What am I supposed to do, Father? And I prayed, but at the end of it, what I realized and what He was showing me is that I couldn't even give this inequity that was put on this person to the Lord, because they never gave it to the Lord. And so they're trying to hide behind God's children, right? So I'm like, well, Lord, what am I supposed to do with that? And it was to take it to the wilderness. But what transpired there was something else I'm not going to go into today, but it was then I realized that God's not going to let you use the law to get around Yeshua. He's not. And so then when that scapegoat prays and tries to give it to him, well, he can't take it, because it's not yours to take. It wasn't your inequity to give up. It was this other person that's hiding behind the scapegoat so that they do not have to suffer the consequences of sin, the spiritual consequences of sin. So I'm going to tell this other story, and I know this is getting a little long, but I think it's important because it gives you an idea of what happens when inequity, when sin, when these things stay with the person. I was working on a client, and they were there with their lover, and other half, whatever. And the other half decided to do Reiki there in my office. And I was very unhappy about it, but I was working for somebody else. I couldn't really do anything about it. And they didn't know that I had eyes to see, that I could see what they were doing. And I knew she was actually performing these things. It wasn't, some people think that they're doing stuff, and they're really not. But she was the real deal. But she didn't understand what she was doing. So she was taking this energy out of this person and throwing it onto the ground. So I'm seeing this, and I'm like, great. I was not happy because she's leaving it in my office. I'm like, I'm going to have to deal with that, right? Not me, but God who's with me. I was like, well, that's unfortunate. But I was busy that day, like I was most days. And I couldn't do anything about it. And the woman felt better after her Reiki session that was in my office and kind of got hijacked. And I went about my day. And as I'm watching, just working, I see this spiritual entity come and feed off of the energy that was left in the room. And I was like, oh, that's a problem. But what was I supposed to do? You know, it's whatever. Scavengers. The problem was that after it was finished, it followed the trail, the scent, spiritual scent of that too. And I knew where it had went. And I left my office a little bit later, and I said to one of my co-workers, I told them what happened. I said, you watch. Their hip will be far worse now because I knew what was going to happen. That creature, the energy was, the dysfunction, the sin, the inequity, whatever you want to call it, was stuck in her body. When it was removed and it was left open, things smelt it and came for it, and it was going to follow it and feed off of it. It was going to make her sicker. And I told her that. And within a month, the woman had to have a hip replacement after she was not anywhere near that bad before she came there. And I was really upset about that, but it is what it is. You see, that inequity will draw evil. The sin will draw evil into your camp. And so they have to send it away. They have to put it in something and send it away. What do you do with that? I didn't know how to fix it. I mean, it's not fair. This person didn't deserve to be made into a scapegoat. What was I supposed to do? I didn't know what to do, but God is faithful when we ask. He has already went ahead of us, and He will help. And so He did. And He showed me what to do. And the person's personality changed. Their life changed. And maybe there was other things going on too, but things got better. Don't let the world make you a scapegoat. You give that to God. And if someone has made you into a scapegoat, pray. He is faithful. He is faithful. And you are not alone. You are not alone. And I will pray with you and pray with you if you need me. But you always have Him. You always have Him, and He will help you.